Okay, welcome to this edition of The Hot Seat. My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm Executive Editor for HeraldStandard.com, and with us today is Tom Harkless. Tom is the Executive Director for the Fayette County Housing Authority. As we were talking a little bit before the show, it seems kind of hard to believe. We were talking about how long you've been here, and you said you started in '99, so you've been here for
it'll be 13 years this fall.
This fall. That's pretty amazing. And Tom, it's certainly no secret that the Fayette County Housing Authority had its, before you started, certainly had its more than a share of troubles, a lot of problems. The former executive director ended up going to prison, and they were pretty much cited by the National Housing Authority or HUD or whatever. HUD. And it's being a troubled agency and that sort of thing. And pretty much you've been able to turn that around, and I know there's been some downsizing, but you've done here near the problems. There used to be shootings and all that kind of stuff, and really that things have quieted down. Like I said, some of that probably is downsizing. And I know one of the things that in a recent story was about the vacancy rate. And I think it's down to what, 3% now?
Actually, it's probably under 3% right now, yes.
Which is pretty remarkable turnabout when it was double digits for, for
actually, it was, when I came in the fall of '99, it was closer to 30% at the time.
Wow. Yeah. So, and I think that's a real indication of, do people want to live there or not? And obviously when you have a high vacancy rate, people don't want to live there. But now people do. People see it as safe, affordable housing.
And I think that at the time what we found out is that the Housing Authority had units, apartments. At the time there was approximately 1,500 scattered through the county, and they were of the bedroom sizes that were for large families, and large families don't really exist like they had before. And they were also in locations where weren't convenient for low and middle income people. When I came here in '99, about 55% of the Housing Authority's units were pre-1960 construction. So they were old. They went back to the first project that was built was Beerwood, and that was done in 1940 and 41. There had been some repairs, new roofs, furnaces, that type of thing. But as far as gut rehabs, there really wasn't any of that. So what we did when I first came to address the big vacancy problem was to see if in fact the units were needed. So we commissioned a contract with a developer and had some market studies done, and we found out that there were too many units of the wrong size, of the wrong kind, in the wrong area.
And that had been kind of a problem because there had been, I remember when we did a number of stories on it, and we had more public housing than like Westmoreland County, which Westmoreland County is about three or four times bigger than Fayette County. And it seemed like there was a lot of outsiders kind of coming in too, because the rent was cheaper and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So you had to wonder if it really was benefiting Fayette County residents, or was it benefiting, folks from outside the county?
It probably wasn't benefiting the county as a whole as far as residents. Mm-hmm. There were areas that may have been benefiting county residents in and around Uniontown, in and around Connellsville. We had one development that was out in Redstone Township, and it was 100 apartments there. And it was so rural that we had our own sewage treatment plant there, and the post office would not deliver mail there. The people had to either drive or walk to Republic, which was about 1.5 miles away, to get their mail. So that's how remote that site was. Since then, and we had a big problem out there where 50% of the property was vacant, which causes all kinds of problems, anything from lack of curb appeal to people breaking into units, vandalizing, people having unwanted guests, that type of thing. So today, that property, what we did is we got approval from HUD to demolish that and to actually sell the land. And we did that back in probably 03, 04. So, that property is now back on the tax rolls and it's ready to be developed. But that was 100 units right there that we were able to tear down and not think about replacing, because it's just not the right place at the right time, and it had an awful lot of 4 and 5 bedroom units in it, which there's not those size families anymore.
Yeah. So when you first kind of maybe heard about the job or whatever, and when you first came, what kind of attracted you to it, or what did you, why did you decide to take the job?
Well, I'm born and raised in Pennsylvania. I had worked for 3 housing authorities in Pennsylvania before. The longest was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as the executive director there. The Chicago Housing Authority was taken over by HUD in May of '95. I was asked to go out to Chicago and do an assessment because all the board had resigned, all the senior staff had resigned. So they got about 8 individuals from across the country to go out and do an assessment. And the whole idea was to assess different areas and make recommendations, come up with a plan, and then help hire a senior staff. And since there was no board, the secretary of HUD, which was Henry Cisneros at the time, assumed the control of the housing authority and was the board of directors. Went out the plan was to go out for 3 months, do an assessment. I was on loan from the housing authority in Lancaster. Make a long story short, the assistant secretary of HUD resigned to accept the executive director's position, asked me if I would come and be a director of operations or assistant director of operations for the housing authority. And I did, so I was out there for 4 years. And we got that housing authority turned around, gave it back to the city. It was time for me to come back to Pennsylvania. My mother was still alive and living in Altoona, where I grew up. So this was a good location. I had visited this housing authority back in the probably late 80s, early 90s. I knew Stephanie King, who was the Redevelopment Authority Executive Director at the time, Waylon Smith, who was the County Executive Director for the Redevelopment Authority. They had been in contact with me because they knew I was wanting to come back to Pennsylvania, and it just fell into place. I think one of the reasons that the board hired me is my experience with taking troubled housing authorities and turning them around. I was able to do that in Chicago. When I went to Lancaster, it was the same thing. It was both an operationally and financially troubled housing authority. Prior to that, I actually did a startup housing authority in Blair County, Pennsylvania. So I knew the business, and I knew the people in the local, regional, and the central office of HUD to help get these things approved and move through. So that is the reason that I came back. The job was done in Chicago, and Pennsylvania's home. Always was and always will be.
And so were you aware, obviously you had to be aware of the reputation that the Fayette County Housing Authority had at the time. Were you somewhat concerned about that, or did you feel that it was something that could be turned around?
Obviously I felt that it could be turned around. You know, housing authorities, generally speaking, get a bad rap. And people see housing authorities as projects. But in most communities, housing authorities not only provide affordable housing, but their economic development in those communities. I mean, our housing authority, we own and operate probably over $100 million worth of real estate in this county. We have over a $20 million a year budget to run those and provide rental assistance through the Section 8 HUD program. So, you know, housing authorities are good. They can do good. But a lot of people see them as being bad, where housing authorities are generally, they're good. And, you know, if you have a professional staff, and we've spent a lot of time and effort and money training our staff. And right now we've got one of the best staffs in the state, because what we're able to do is the three key things that I think housing authorities are created for, and that is to be a developer, to be a property management company, and to be an owner. And that's what we are. We develop, redevelop affordable housing, we manage our own portfolio, and we manage the Section 8 rental assistance program. Right there, we're able to help over 1,400 families in the county with those two programs. And then we're the owner. As I said, we own over $100 million worth of real estate in the county.
So what do you think was, when you first came in, what was like the first thing that you looked at that you felt had to be addressed? What, was it the vacancy rate?
It was. I mean, financially, the housing authority was okay. So that was not the biggest problem. It was the operations of the housing authority, and what we had to address was, you know, the vacancy problem, and then along with that is, do we have the policies and the procedures to get good qualified tenants into those units once we get them remodeled and back on the market? So that's what we did focus on. We focused on our admission, continued occupancy, how we were getting these units ready, and we did the market studies to see if they were truly needed.
And I guess part of that too is, as you were saying about the kind of admission, to try and maybe do better screening, maybe, because you really don't want people, you know, troublemakers or, you know, people, drug dealers and that sort of thing. And certainly that had been a problem in the past.
Yep. And you know, staff working with our board were able to set systems in place where it became more stringent to qualify for our property. We trained our managers and staff to enforce the lease. So if you had undesirable residents, or if they had undesirable guests and were in violation of the lease, they received an eviction notice. And if they did not comply, then they were in fact evicted. And as we brought new people in, we set up these procedures. We do a credit check and we do a criminal background check on every adult member in the families today. That is both for our Section 8 program and for our public housing. So we treat our property as a neighborhood. And, you know, we don't want bad people in the neighborhood because we're concerned about the people in the neighborhood, whether it be scattered sites where it's truly a neighborhood of privately owned property and we have one in the middle of it, or we have, like at Beerwood, we have 85 units, 86 units of row houses up there where we're basically the neighborhood adjacent to the hospital, Uniontown Hospital.
And I guess once maybe people then saw that you were really getting serious, not only in just making sure that the people that came in weren't troublemakers or whatever, but that also evicting people, because that also had seemed to be a problem before, where they never they were very reluctant to evict people before. But so then once you were able to do that, then people started to see that you were really serious about that.
That we meant business, that
Right.
there was a contract that the residents had with the housing authority, the dwelling lease, and we were enforcing it. And we were enforcing it so that if we were to provide service in accordance with the lease, we were doing it. And I was holding staff's feet to the fire to do that. But in the same thing, we wanted the residents to comply with the terms and conditions that they had agreed to in the lease. And so yeah, we had some folks that were undesirable. We also amended our lease to include a one-strike policy for drugs, which means we have no tolerance whatsoever. So if someone is arrested in or around our property, they are evicted. It's as simple as that.
Automatically.
Automatically. It's one strike. We have no tolerance whatsoever. And so, you know, sometimes you have children that are in the household, and those children are putting the whole family in jeopardy.
And I guess that, you know, what's your sense? I mean, do you think that really it is just kind of a small minority of people kind of causing those type of problems, and that most people are like just want, you know, safe and affordable housing? I do. I may be a realist, but I think that the most of the people that come to the Housing Authority, they need a helping hand. They're unable to afford housing on the private market. So either in our developments or through the Section 8 program, they're able to afford. We also have some programs. It's a self-sufficiency program where if a family would like to volunteer for this program, we work with the other social service agencies and government, like CareerLink and Private Industry Council, and to help people become educated, become employed, improve their employment. So the whole idea is they can become self-sufficient. We've been able to help over 100 families in the last 10 years with this program. Some still remain residents in our Section 8 and public housing. Others have gone out and bought their own homes. Others have left our developments and are now paying market rates in the general market area. So it's a combination of things. And then we have some people that don't want home ownership. They only want to rent. Mm-hmm. And so they've increased the quality of their life, and we have ceiling rents. So they are paying market rate. They're paying $600 or $700 a month to live in one of our developments, mm-hmm. because they choose not to go into home ownership or to go to the private market. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to take a break right now. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
As a third-generation family florist here in Fayette County, I'm asking you that when you shop at a local business.
Purchase your Buy Local discount card for just $7 from the Herald Standard at 724-439-7500, press 7, or online at www.howuspinit.com.
Every time you shop using your local community discount card, not only are you helping your friends and neighbors, you're investing in your community. So savor the flavor of Fayette. Buy local.
Monongahela Valley Hospital presents Innovations, a series of free medical information presentations for our community.
Hello, I'm orthopedic surgeon Christopher Emond. Please join me at the Monvale Healthplex on Wednesday, July 13th at 6 p.m. when I will discuss the diagnosis of and the surgical and non-surgical treatment of rotator cuff disease.
To reserve your seat, call Monongahela Valley Hospital, 724-258-1333.
Okay, welcome back to this edition of The Hot Seat. My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm the executive editor for HeraldStandard.com, and with us today is Tom Harkless. Tom is the executive director for the Fayette County Housing Authority. And in the first part of the show, we were talking about, you've been here now since 1999, almost 13 years. I think you said it'll be in the fall. Mm-hmm. And it seems pretty amazing how time flies. You know, we were talking about a lot of the problems that happened with the Fayette County Housing Authority preceding you, and how you were able to turn things around and get the vacancy rate, which you said was like 30% when you started. It's now down below 3%, which is certainly a remarkable achievement. However, so we have all these kind of good things, but now kind of looming with a lot of talk about the deficit on the federal government, and of course that's where you get your money from HUD, and so they're talking about making some fairly drastic cuts from what the media is in the media. And I know you're very concerned about some programs that might be in jeopardy. You want to talk about?
You know, typically housing authorities don't receive a lot of state money. Generally speaking, housing authorities receive their money from two areas. They receive it from the rents they generate and from the federal government through the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. We receive funds for three major programs that we have. The one is our public housing program, where we have about 1,250 units now. Plus we have some old non-federal housing, and we've gotten into the tax credit business, and we've done some of that. So with the operating budgets, since HUD tells us how much rent we can collect, and it's 30% of a person's income, and we have income limits, so we're helping low-income people, and as they increase their income, their rent goes up. But it's never more than 30% of their income. So they limit how much income the housing authority can generate from rent. So what there is an operating subsidy. And the operating subsidy is exactly that. It's used to subsidize the day-to-day operations. Pay the light bill, pay the gas bill, buy materials, buy supplies, help pay salaries, that type of thing. Currently, Congress has or actually HUD has a formula on how they fund housing authorities using energy costs and this and that. And then what HUD does annually is they appropriate funds to pay for it. The current year that we're in right now, HUD appropriated funds that were 18% less than what the industry says is needed. So my operating subsidy for this year would be 78% of what the formula says my needs are.
What you really need, yeah.
So a housing authority has to be operate efficiently, and we do have reserves so that if you really get tough and you have a problem and need to make an expenditure, you can go to your reserves. What's proposed for next year is instead of an 18% cut, they're going to cut it even further. So it will be a 23% cut. So so it's even harder for us to pay the gas bill, the electric bill, the staff salaries, buy materials, and that type of thing. And remember, we're not allowed to pass any cost on to our residents. Their rents are their rents. It's 30% of their income. So that's one thing that they are proposing. In addition, most housing authorities do have operating reserves. And a good housing authority, the rule of thumb is you should have about 6 months of operating money in reserve. So that if you didn't receive any operating reserve from HUD, with the rents that you collect over 6 months and what you have in your savings account, you could operate for the next 6 months without any money. Our housing authority, we have just a little bit more than 6 months. What HUD is proposing is that the industry says that you need about $5 billion a year to subsidize all the housing authorities' operating budget. What the administration asked for was $4 billion. And HUD said, housing authorities can use their operating reserve for the $1 billion shortfall. Since not all housing authorities have a reserve, what they're talking about is anything over a certain number, and the number, it's a moving target, would be recaptured by HUD and given to another housing authority. Then they also said that they're changing the rules for spending your operating reserve. You can't make any improvements or capital improvements with your reserves. So if I have a high-rise for the elderly and I'm a bad planner and it's a 20-year roof and I'm on year 23 and it starts leaking and I wanted to use $150,000 to put a new roof on a high-rise, I'm not allowed to do that anymore because they don't want me to spend down my reserve now that they're eyeing it up. So that would be significant for our housing authority because we not only use our reserve for putting roofs on high-rises and you know, making sure that the day-to-day operations are paid for, but we are allowed to use that money to leverage for the other developments that we're doing. The Housing Authority just purchased the Heritage Apartments, which is 36 elderly apartments on Morgantown and Main in Peters. That building was done with tax credits, so they reduced the construction costs, but they didn't have an operating subsidy for it. So there was a problem financially. The Housing Authority stepped in, acquired the building. We're now having public housing operating subsidy there. But we were able to use some of our reserve funds to help that real estate deal go down. If you're not allowed to use that anymore, then you can't do that. And that would have been terrible if that building went into default. Yes.
Yeah, you weren't able to use that.
So with the operating side, they're talking about only funding at 23% of what the formula says. They're talking about recapturing your operating subsidy. Then the other side is the Section 8 program, where we help over 1,100 families we subsidize their rent in the private market. And we get paid a fee for that because we have to do the applications, the recertifications, the inspections, follow up on complaints, that type of thing. And they're proposing to reduce the administrative fee, what it costs to operate that program, by 25%. Right now, the Housing Authority is subsidizing our Section 8 program because it's not generating enough money right now to pay for the day-to-day operations. The physical, taking the applications, the recertifications, the inspections. We just had a consultant come in, make some recommendations, and the recommendations there is that we may have to do some cutting of positions there in our Section 8 program. Then the third program that we have, large program, is the Capital Fund, where when I came here back in '99, the Housing Authority was getting $4 million a year to do planned capital improvements. The current year that we're in right now, we're given about half of that, about $2 million. What the administration has proposed to Congress to fund is a 60% cut in that. So that would reduce our capital fund grant from $2 million down to about $800,000. That is a significant cut. That would, we would go back to the old days of what it was when I got here, which was bubble gum and Band-Aid. Not getting it, not getting in there and doing it once and doing right. It would be patching it to make it limp along for another year. So those three programs, that would be major funding cuts for us. And with the public housing program, if our operating subsidy is reduced, bottom line is if you don't have the money to provide a service, the service goes away.
Service goes away.
So yeah, it's
definitely looks like some challenging times ahead there. I guess you're hoping that some of these cuts can somehow be avoided? Or?
Yes, there are groups out there, since we're government, we're not allowed to lobby, but there are groups out there that are lobbying, nonprofit groups that are lobbying, trying to make Congress aware just what effect this would have. And you have to remember that, you know, the general public actually
not a lot of sympathy.
But it benefits the general public.
Right.
I mean,
hopefully people understand.
Yeah, and you know, like I said earlier, our housing authority spends about $20 million a year in Fayette County for anything from construction contracts to materials and supplies to salaries that we pay, either through contracts or employees that we have. So if that number goes down, that has a direct effect on the county.
Well, Tom, that's going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank you very much for coming on our show. Very
I'd like to thank you for inviting me.
And I want to thank you out there for watching. My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm Executive Editor for HeraldStandard.com. We'll see you later.